we're trying to determine really what does it mean for a human to interact effectively with a model. One thing that we know for sure is that we want to have an environment where a human can make decisions at a speed that's natural for them. If they're constantly receiving information at a rate that's too fast for them to process, it's not going to be a decision. We kind of have the opposite problem today, where an individual can sit down in a model-based environment and they push a button and they wait and they wait. So now your mind has wandered off to something else. So what's the right cadence? That's one of the questions. So data science and computational power enable a tremendous amount of information to be generated and shown to you. The question is, how do we filter that in such a way that it can be appropriately cognitively processed and perceived by the human decision maker? The goal of model-based environments is really to help the engineer or decision maker to make decisions. We don't think we can totally take humans out of the loop, yet we can automate or augment intelligence in a lot of ways using models. So in our research, we're very interested in what are the particular critical points where a human has to jump in and make some determinations, whereas where can we rely on automation to make decisions for us. Our research on digital twins, and combined with that, the idea of how should humans interact with models, has really opened up a lot of additional questions. And one of those is what kind of leadership is needed for this future that we're looking at. The reuse of models today is very limited, usually within a particular, say, project or business area, possibly that there's some transfer across these. But how do we actually make use of models? How do we invest in these models, develop these really high-end models, such as digital twins? And then who's going to provide the leadership that makes sure that these models become really enterprise-level assets? So where we currently are in the research is that we've defined a potential new role called a model curator. So you can think of a model curator as somewhat analogous to the idea of a museum curator. If you have an art museum, a large art museum, there's a head curator, and their job would be to oversee the care of those assets, to determine what assets should be brought into the museum. But a key role of this individual is to put together, say, special exhibits for the public good. In putting together a special exhibit, you really have to know your collection, and you have to understand the real message that you want to put out there through a special exhibit. So an industry or a government agency, we could see that this new role of model curator could provide the ability, say, to give more powerful demonstrations of capability that the company could deliver. There are many industries that work, say, in a competitive bid situation, and they're asked to bring forward their potential solution to how they would approach what the customer is asking for. Now, with the power of models, we can start to tap into all the collection of enterprise models and say, well, what could we pull together to represent, our best solution? And it would be the role of the model curator, the leader, to kind of oversee this at an enterprise level and know the collection, to know what could be put together, and to know where perhaps they're missing some essential piece. They have to go out and contact another company and get a model from one of their suppliers. They're the ones who arrange this, who deal with the IP issues. In the research, we're starting to look into what kinds of forms could it take to have this person in this leadership role of model curation. And so we've been studying a number of different forms. This could be a high-level executive role that's centralized across your entire enterprise. It could also perhaps be something that's more localized within business units, and then there's a committee where the different curator leaders collaborate. So in our research, we've been talking with a number of executives about this idea of whether a new role is needed for being a chief leader of these model-based assets. And there's been a tremendous positive response to this, a recognition that we're not using our models at the enterprise level in the way that we could, and that we are facing this future where we're going to have to do so. So we've been looking at the needs of industry and government and how we might go about formulating such a role. What would be the competencies that this person would need? What would be the roles they would play? So since we can never have one size fits all, we've actually been looking at different variants that could be used to put this type of leadership role into a company or a government agency. In doing so, we're uncovering, half a dozen or so different forms that we believe this could take. Everything from a very centralized role where there's a person who's at the top level of the executive team who plays this across an enterprise. So it might be regionally or geographically arranged where you have, say, a team of different model curation experts who then would periodically get together as a committee to look at things at the enterprise level.